Now that we have returned from a break and had some kai and whakaki te kōpū, I should imagine that Mr. Tauhenare will resume his more restful self. Sir, I want to take us and move on the Minister's invitation and go straight to Clause 64. Clause 64, and indeed, sir, the attendant explanatory clauses 65 to 91 in the bill. Because, sir, this debate was always going to turn on how do you conceive the extent, the character and the depth of any residual Māori proprietarial interest in the seabed and foreshore. Now, this debate was rehearsed, sir, in the late 80s, because there was a similar provision, sir, if you'll just bear with me, in the Fisheries Act 88-2. And it was a savings clause, sir, that came from earlier bouts of legislation which gave status to Māori fishing interests. The prevailing view in the Crown at that stage, sir, was that these interests, to the extent that they subsisted into the 20th century, were to be found in discrete areas, rocks, reefs. But, sir, with the Waitangi Tribunal, the High Court, and inevitably our greatest jurist of all, Lord Cook, sir, what they found is that these rights were dynamic, and that as the circumstances of the people changed, so the character of their rights changed. And they were not to be locked or fossilised into the type of economy or the type of society that existed in 1840. And, sir, Māori said, why is it reasonable for the Crown's entitlements in the natural estate to be evolutionary and dynamic, but when you look at the treaty partner Māori, they have to continue to exist as if it's still 1840. And that, sir, over the last 25, 30 years of the treaty-based renaissance has been one of the deep unresolved issues. And, sir, this is what the Māori Land Court was faced with in the Papatupu investigations. Now, those investigations, sir, were where the Māori Land Court tried to determine, number one, how powerful were the rights that a given community had in the landscape. And they looked at such things as trapping, occupation, they looked at fishing, they looked at harvesting of trees, they looked at issues to do with general reliance on that part of the economy. And from there, sir, they framed what would be the nature and extent of a Māori collective, largely speaking, property right in their natural environment. And, sir, this is in many respects what we're now asking the High Court to do. And I said last night, will the High Court have the necessary expertise in terms of additional resources and the rules? And I was assured by the Minister, as I recall, that that work's underway, it's already happened, etc. But, sir, I think where Hone Harawira has got a very useful and actually accurate point was how far short, sir, will the actual rights of the successful applicants be when you consider that if there is a residual proprietarial interest in a given part of the Takutai Moana, much of it, sir, has been hollowed out through accommodated activities, the override entitlement associated with accommodated associations, sir. So I think that a lot of applicants are going to find that what they've got is a very poor, and dare I say it, a pale imitation of what they believe they're getting back, because much has been carved out in order to satisfy other stakeholders. And there, sir, lies a deep problem if we use exclusively a political process, whereas people probably need to have these things teased out in court if they don't feel that the political process, which will be dominated from time to time by colleagues of ours from the ACT Party, and in other times, Mr. Chair, and other times far more reasonable characters which will inevitably come from this side of the House. So deemed accommodated activities and accommodated associations, etc., sir, are going to actually crimp that. Now, so I think that what the Minister is asking us is, are these rights static? Are they dynamic? And if the society that modern Māori find themselves in has got nothing to do with what subsisted in the 1840s and the 1850s, how do you give expression to those rights? What institutional form should they take? And so, can a codified approach, which is designed really, sir, to prevent wild and unmanageable litigation, in my view, will that give a better result than having left the issue ill-defined and invite the tribunal, who no doubt will be in some manner or form dragooned into action, unfortunately, or take it back to the courts? And I think, sir, the threshold, when we use the expression the threshold test, that's really what we're talking about. Now, the answer, unfortunately, in this piece of legislation has already been given, because other than there may be a narrow range of minerals where there is perceived to be a prevailing Māori ownership interest in those, but other minerals have been carved out. And the difficulty, sir, and the irreconcilable tension is that you may give some tangata whenua group a right, a title, and they may have the ability to block someone wanting to engage in economic development activities in their area, but at the end of the day, the Department of Conservation, the Minister of Conservation, has the overarching yay or nay power. And so I think that's why the Māori Party, whilst they're agreeing that this bill is an improvement, in actual fact they've overlooked the fact that there is only minor and modest authority attached with these tangata whenua groups. At the end of the day, the power to regulate, the power to allocate, the power to administer, and indeed the power at the end of the day to even regulate the Takutai Moana title holders will rest with the Minister of Conservation. Now, is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, someone's got to be in power and control, but sir, to suggest that it's going to provide a basis to restore the rights that romantically exist in the minds of our friends from the Māori Party is both wrong, in fact, and I think it's, sir, quite misleading of them to continue to leave our people with the impression that that they're going to be satisfied with the passage of this legislation. So I want to go to, as I enjoy your indulgence, so section 61, page 56. And this is all going to be a debate as to what is justiciable. What factors can a judge or a minister take into account when you form the final shape, depth and value of these rights? And so what applicants are going to be able to do, and what statutory decision makers are going to be able to do, is they're going to be able to take into account whether or not there's been a ongoing commercial or non-commercial fishing interest. And so I would caution anyone against reopening that debate, and I hope this legislation goes nowhere there. But what they are going to be able to do, in addition to that, sir, because a lot of the customary fishing rights depend on access, and it's not so much whether or not the applicant groups, sir, have enjoyed unfettered access to the land abutting the Takutai Moana, but it's whether any of their members, sir, have also had that right. And as day follows night, so you can rest assured that there is a vast difference between the applicant tangata whenua group and its members. And without a doubt, sir, a number of the members will have certain land rights, but those organisations and those members will not be congruent with the actual group that's making the application, because many of these groups, sir, will be political in character. They will not actually be the specific or identifiable landowners. And indeed, sir, they're going to create situations through, I think, unwise drafting, not unlike the Maunga Tautari current dispute, where it involves individual private Māori landowners at the moment, individuals who are in the hapu claimant group. So what I'm saying, sir, is that with the, I think, unwise, and the minister's gone now, and we're unlikely to learn anything from the person in the chair. So, sir, thank you, sir.
Honourable